Hello, and welcome to Resolve, an afterplay show. This is an after show for a role-playing game that does not have an actual play, but we tell you the details of our game so you don't have to listen to it. Hi, I'm Sammie. I'll be your host. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Assyria Molly, also uses she, her. Join me is my wonderful co-host, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I play Moogle avatar of Alexander Smog. Both of us use he, him pronouns.
We are joined today by Dexter.
Hello, I'm Dex Fan. I play Athenos in EFFETE, the furry wolf personification of Athena. We both use he, him pronouns.
We're also joined today by Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the game master for this campaign.
Welcome, thank you for joining us today. Now that we're all here, Alex, why don't you tell us about the actual play?
Previously, in EFFETE, the fountain's figures hold hands while the fireworks go off. As the clock tower bell tolls, the party feels different effects of aging, excluding Smog. At the fifth chime, Lone collapses and wolves encroach on the courtyard. As more chimes sound, the party fights off wolves with scolding, magic, and intimidation. At the 10th chime, they see celestial events. At the 11th chime, the wolves mostly melt off. At the 12th, the new age begins in brilliant light. Ciclia greets the party, explaining that she told Alraun how to become Lone to achieve eternal life, and gives them the core. She plans to find the revitalized Alraun. The core, along with the world of spirits, creates a portal. Past the portal, they find a water world with the series familiar Forcefini. Forcefini tags along as the party moves to an urban area familiar to Smog. They find torn wanted posters for Smog and Juice and out-of-place elements like circus tents. They continue with a dark portal to a flooded circus where Hercules works out. Hercules explains that they are in a space between worlds influenced by the party's actions. They continue to an underwater Greek ruin where Assyria meets an aspect of the abyss in a diving suit. They create one last portal to Sequence Charter. Athenos stays back with Hercules and Forcefini to shape this space between. The rest of the party is greeted to deactivated portals, an emotional alarm in Sequence Charter.
So now that you've heard the actual play, let's do a deep dive into the session. So right off the bat, Daniel, I have a question for you. What inspired you to do the trope of 12 seconds until the bomb explodes or whatever, like in every action movie?
Okay, yeah. The primary thing around the World of Ages is that I wanted to explore time as a concept. This is partially motivated through a little bit of a thematic through line with the rest of the worlds, but specifically for how the whole celebration of the next age went down. This was actually something that I kind of wanted to mess around with in a campaign setting for a long time before I considered starting out GMing. An encounter of some kind is happening, and the world is just being absolutely transformed as the countdown is like finishing up. This was my attempt at implementing that in this campaign setting.
It fell completely in place with being like a Final Fantasy character too, because especially around Final Fantasy 13, a lot of stuff, even side Final Fantasy games, was about clock stuff. Because it's like, ooh, we went one past the clock numbers.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the context for Final Fantasy, but there are a few different sources of inspiration that have gone into this world that have sort of meshed together.
Like Interstitial's very own harm clock?
Maybe like a metaphorical harm clock for the world, I suppose. Actually, in the base game for Apocalypse, it is an actual circular clock too. The player that I had in mind for this world was, I don't know if this is too surprising, but Athenos. In Athenos' world, humanity has this kind of core theme of second chances. The gods change over time, and humans, even if they die or don't pass the trials, they basically have the opportunity of coming back. The idea of second chances, especially throughout time, is what this world is that non-linear trajectory off of. Kind of a twisted interpretation of it. The second chances were sort of used for much smaller, petulant goals, because if someone wanted to rewrite the whole universe, that was just in their reach. The conflict is a much more melancholy scenario. The last remaining person just wants to wait, prevent second chances for everyone else.
It definitely feels like, what if the near paradise that Athenos could have was fucked up by concepts from a series, Smog and Tao's World especially.
Yes. It's so fitting that Smog stepped out into the anachronism in this world. Its relevance immediately became evoked. There's a few things that I had in mind that sort of fed into this. I'm going to plug this again at the end, but there's a video compiling scientific theory to produce an artistic representation of what a time lapse into the end of the universe would look like. Our universe, in this case. They have a number of years for the universal age counting up. Every, I think, 5 seconds, the rate that time counts up doubles. Quickly getting to our point, because, the present right now is just baby steps of the universe in its total lifespan. And then as time just exponentially explodes, you get to see how cosmologically it progresses. A lot of the idea for how the next ages worked in this, and the setting where you guys got to, is inspired by that. Lone had waited out the clock for such a long time that the time you guys got there is wow, there's pretty much nothing anymore. Which is supposed to be kind of a stark contrast to the ideas of rejuvenation, in this case, what we brought about by subsequent ages.
You said that this world was focused around Athenos, and I could feel that from the moment we got there. It was bleak and cold. Very much like a Dark Souls / Elden Ring / Demon Souls experience. I was here for it, which is very interesting because Athenos' background is this very dark Elden Ring-esque thing, but mixed with Disney's her very wholesome approach to family in a very dark atmospheric world. It became especially clear when we just got there, and it felt so much like a segment called The Painting of Ariamis. This bleak snowfield. It's beautiful, yet quiet and dead. And that's how this felt playing through it. Even the clues you were giving us, when we found names on coffins, constantly being attacked by snow wolves, everything was very cryptic in this world. Hearing you speak now about Lone and Alron and what she kind of ended up doing with a gift from her god, I feel rightfully angry. Sorry, I feel like my anger was rightfully placed at Lone throughout this time, because I was just constantly Lone, something about you, I don't like it.
Which is interesting because Asiri felt nothing but pity instead. There's a tender sadness there.
It did seem like they had seen the error of their ways towards the end. They were ready to initiate the new age. They were we've waited long enough, perhaps.
Yeah, Lone is a conflicted character. The sort of struggle in the World of Ages was external, between being able to successfully begin the next age versus being interrupted. There was also a smaller battle, particularly with Lone Alron, who was in love with Cyclia. Through their relationship, Lone gained the ability to, one, preserve themselves, eventually, in reaction to what the rest of the people had been doing. But two, they had the know-how to stop the next ages from occurring, which is unforgivable, depending on how you look at it. Like Sammie said, it's also sort of a pitiful thing. This is someone who went with this option because it's what they thought was best. It's better just to have things just run their course and wait. Very interested to hear more about, Alex, what your perspectives on that were.
We have a character who parallels Smog quite a bit, being so devoted to a deity that you're doing things they don't even ask for. Gaining some of their power, and perhaps not in a good way, or not always doing exactly the right thing with it. Smog found that in Lone, and that's why he's very interested in having Lone see other worlds and having Cyclia also have that information. And I'm excited to have Smog come back in a way that I don't know I care as much about going back to the world of Spirit right now. Maybe somebody else does, but I feel like Smog is the most amped for coming back to the world of ages and speaking with Lone, or speaking with no longer Lone.
In the interim, Cyclia is basically going to find Alraun in the world of ages because that next age has begun. I do hope you guys go back to all of these places. The other thing was, Dex, like what you said, there was something from Dark Souls, in addition to the world of Ariamis, that also was a source of inspiration. And also a potential scenario in this world is something that could have happened in parallel. I gotta say, spoiler warning here if people are interested. Also from Dark Souls 3, the DLC, they explore what the end of time in that universe is like. You go through a time skip, and everything is ashes and cinders, and, like, on the ground. All like the castles and buildings are sort of buried in the dust. The last boss fight is, again, someone who for the longest time was completely ignored, and someone who on their own had lost hope, but they had found it again in specifically the item that they were seeking out. And the last boss fight is for control of that final item. That idea of being in the post-apocalypse, but with no one else around, being at the end of time, and your confrontation is with one singular person who is still around, who defied all of the odds. Especially if you guys were to battle Lone, I imagine it would look very similar.
Oh, now I wish we battled Lone.
We had time so we could fight.
Now I'm seeing like the parallels between Lone and who you're talking about, Slave Knight Gale, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even consider that. I was so focused on like the painting, and I was thinking Priscilla.
Right.
I was wondering if Lone, through the process of attaining godhood through romance with Cyclia, I mean, now they consider themselves Lone, right? So does she remember her days as Alraun anymore? Because like so much time has passed. How much of her has degraded over that extremely long, expansive pseudo-immortality?
I tried to have a lot of the details be pretty subtle, but one of the things that I had Lone convey to the party is that they knew that you all would come there eventually. Cyclia passed down information to Alraun trillions of years ago, but at the same time, when you guys first got there, Lone doubted that you guys were even real. Alraun had preserved herself in this chassis that would eventually become Lone. As the whole world around degrades over time, how sure are you that you even have all of the same memories intact, the same mental faculties? A lot of it's still there, but it's a little bit of a question mark.
Kind of glossed over it, but we kind of have to talk about how Cyclia predicted our coming trillions of years in advance. What's going on here?
God powers, question mark?
When your domain is time.
Yeah.
Fair.
So Cyclia predicted your guys' arrival because your arrival would lead to the next age being initiated. That is all of what Cyclia's domain is. The repetitions, the initiations of subsequent ages, kind of the reset button. They knew that 6 people would come in, plus a Marlboro, and eventually lead to that. I don't know how much of the specifics were foretold in advance because, like you said, that's a very long time in the future to be able to predict that. It was enough to at least etch your images down on the cog.
I'm still, like, mind-blown over all of the parallels to Athenos. Skipping ahead, we'll get back to it later, but we meet Hercules, which is Athenos' lover, in sort of the exact same position as Alraun was to Cyclia. It's very interesting to see how that might end up going forward.
I hope it goes well.
It would be like an inverse relationship. From what I gathered from Cyclia from the brief amount of time that we spent with her in this session, she seems to be more like the head on the ground, reasonable god, and then Alraun is like the unreasonable, seeking eternity, right? In this case, I feel like Hercules is the one who's pretty down to earth. He is human and he's seeking demigodhood, godhood, whereas like Athenos is just like head in the clouds, loosey-goosey, willing to bend the rules of reality on a whim, petty as heck.
I would describe Alround transforming into Lone. Everything that they were doing is for the world is like, this is for your own good. Whether or not that was right, obviously, that's not stated because it's wrong in plenty of ways.
Yeah.
It's the mind frame.
That puts the conversation Asiri had with Lone into so much more perspective for me. Because Asiri is like, you're exerting your will upon this timeline. Is it not the same thing as having the wolves exert their will on the new one? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's definitely a seed that Smog planted, so it's fun to know that even if he's not intentionally doing it anymore, Smog is just pushing ideas out into the ether again.
Influence.
I do have to ask you, Dan, why did you choose Alrayun as the character's name, though? Because they're not a major deity or spirit, but it is not an insignificant name.
Sammie, would you like to first give the high-level synopsis on what Alrayun is in folklore?
A wandering mandrake spirit from German folklore.
It's kind of an allusion to Lone. They would sort of underplay everyone else, not to get the last laugh, but getting it in at the time that you guys arrive. They had succeeded. They managed to pull the rug out under all of the other mortals that were on that world. They figured out how they could put their soul in a chassis, and they figured out how they could stall the next age. These recurring uses of the next age for those personal reasons, they perceive that as hurting Cyclia. The other thing is, of course, that Alrayun is a mandrake. The sort of characteristics of a mandrake being that combination of what was a tree now with the essence of a dead person is what goes together in Lone. It's a wooden chassis that is inhabited by the soul of someone who had died, but that soul was not able to carry on. It's also a corruption. Alrayun, all alone, transforms into the person that you see in the World of Ages.
So Smog's going to be really confused because in Final Fantasy games, Alrayun and Mandragora are very cute and chibi.
Yeah.
I feel like at any given point in time, though, like one of our characters is confused, so nothing out of the ordinary.
I think my job is to swapping who is confused at any one moment.
In the middle of the session, I had to be like, how do I convey that Smog is not a dolphin? Because we were talking about Smog being raised by the Mughal Mafia, and Athenos was like, oh, so you went to bad school, and Asiri was like dolphins or something along those lines. And it's like, how do I most easily get out of this conversation, convey that Smog is definitely not a dolphin? And just like, I don't know what dolphins are.
We made
a serious citation of the Odyssey.
Oh my gosh, that conversation like got out of hand so fast.
It only got out of hand because Zach was like, and then Tao goes, people in my world make their hand go like a
Yeah. I did look it up in the Final Fantasy wiki, and dolphins are apparently only referenced as weird sea lizard creature, and only in one game, like a side series. And then one character has a dolphin kick skill. So yeah, there's no reason for Smog to know what a dolphin is.
It's like a medieval interpretation of a dolphin.
Yeah.
This is some kind of fish.
I am interested in a world that has a move called dolphin kick, but no other application of the word dolphin.
No, none.
Like, where did that come from?
I was also like, I can explain that somebody wiped it from his memory for fun, to be silly, for this exact scenario.
Dolphins? You mean the concept from the move dolphin kick?
Yeah, the dolphin, we all know it. The entire time span was very intense, though, with the bell chiming and the fireworks and the general chaos.
This was another direct inspiration for this world, but Auld Lang Syne, the New Year's celebration and the song accompanying it. I don't know how clear that might have been. That's why I said the time frame where you guys entered this world was so hilarious to me, because you guys got here, right around New Year's. The song itself is about remembrance of times and people from your past. The specifics on how the world gets recycled, as it were, is I wanted to frame it kind of like a New Year's celebration. Imperceptible, but accompanied by, they even say New Year, New Me, different chances, that sort of thing.
New age, new me.
Literally, though.
New Smog who dis.
Yeah, actually, Smog also became a completely new person.
I think we've talked a couple times about how this is a perfect place for that to happen.
Yeah. I wanted it to be a celebration of some kind, because it contrasts really well with the scenery that you guys are in. A place that's comparatively desolate. It's so far gone away, even the trees are just buried up to the very top, just in snow and ice.
I, for one, am very happy we did not fight Lone as we got them. Because I've seen Dan play Dark Souls, and I don't want to do that in an RPG session.
This is the second time I've wanted to fight our main contact of the world. And we found a way around it.
Wait, you were gonna fight Susie?
Well, okay. I was gonna fight Baby Brother Sleep Beast.
Okay.
Baby Brother Sleep Beast. The option is always there to fight. That tension is always ready to boil up and over. I think part of it came down to Lone losing their internal conflict as well, not really having the strength to betray, because you guys had definitely called it out. Lone was 100% planning to betray you guys during the next age ritual, but they couldn't go through with it, not after seeing how everything had gone up to this point.
I mean, look at us. Do you think you could double-cross this intrepid group of explorers?
It's so funny to me. We're playing this game that is ostensibly mostly based on Kingdom Hearts, and we've come back around to Kingdom Hearts metaphysics through Dark Souls. Because in Kingdom Hearts, there's the concept that everybody has three pieces to their being. The heart, which is your emotions, your feelings, and then your soul, which is your will to live, more analytical, your thoughts, and your body. We definitely have Lone, who feels like somebody who's not a person, maybe a nobody. We've definitely come back around to Kingdom Hearts through Dark Souls and the fact they have to build a lot of their mythos around the mechanics of harvesting souls.
Which is wild, putting those two next to each other.
Now that you mention it, it's kind of an insane combination, but I'm not against it.
Lone being a nobody worshipping a god makes a lot of sense, because when we first meet her and then we are doing all of our introductions, I remember Athenos being like, I'm a god. She was like, are you real? And Dan went into that earlier, but thinking back on it now, I feel like I can read into it, be like, she's like, I know a god. I have romanced a god. You're a god? I don't think so.
And to make it worse, you also look like a wolf.
Right?
A very direct comparison.
In the metaphysics of Kingdom Hearts, the wolves feel like, what if you could just be the will to live and not exactly have a body? Because the Heartless don't have bodies technically in Kingdom Hearts metaphysics, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever.
The wolves are an interesting topic. I wanted to have a group that was an embodiment of the people that were there before, but very much not exactly. I had a couple different things that were in mind before some of these ideas solidified. One of them was in the basement of the castle, there would have been doll-like ballerina figures, not too dissimilar from what you guys found in the World of the Lost, with what the people looked like. They would dance to try to convey their feelings, their desires to you all. And then when the next age would have been initiated, they would have taken off. Lone themselves, they went through a bunch of different iterations too. As a matter of fact, I came up with Lone's appearance finalized in the session that you guys got there. I was so uncertain of what exactly I wanted. I thought the person who would become lone would have been like this haggardy king, maybe a squire who is just like done with everything, would find you guys like exploring the castle, but just be like, all right, just go have fun, leave me alone, that sort of thing.
Have fun storming the castle.
Yeah, fun storming the castle, I guess. I thought of them as an orc at one point, but then I was like, what if they were a really weird wooded creature? I wanted something that was very separated from human. I feel like it'd be a good contrast.
They feel almost puppet-like with how their limbs are done.
They're literally someone's soul that's just puppeting a wooden device, a wooden vessel.
Yeah, orc would be weird for me because we don't have that to pull from our sort of like collective backgrounds. But hear me out, ogre.
Ogre? You gotta think
that. Pull in tactics, ogre.
Okay, but you guys know if I made the person who would be lone an ogre, the Shrek references would not end.
We have a pony in a party.
We do have someone from the Shrek universe at the party, but
that's exactly why I said ogre, perfectly fine. Yeah. Orc, not feeling it.
You know, lone is kind of Shrek-like now that you mention it.
Yeah, actually. Get out my castle.
My castle.
How does everyone feel about experiencing the heat death of the universe except for Smog?
I really thought that Dan was gonna throw something like extra special and nasty at me. It's not like Smog's body can't die. He does have time powers now, but what if all of Alexander has to be there or something? Like, that could be heinous.
When you guys got to the World of Ages, I was planning on it. Because Smog, I was going to have you and Juice experience the death of magic towards the end of the universe. I was anticipating would be pretty potent against Smog, who is all about facilitating the flow of magic between the Espers and the sort of larger world that they're from. I had a hard time thinking about why Smog would age, because they're a direct representation of Alexander, who is an Esper all about time. Someone who is out of time, someone who controls it. I couldn't see how they would have Smog decay before them, not until at least their purpose was complete. Even at the end of the universe that you guys witnessed, still far away in time. Even at that point, at the final milliseconds before the universe has ended, Alexander is still far away, far out there, because they're still sort of beyond that. But it's so hard for me to think about how to age Smog like that.
We got to turn that around and do something that I wanted to do as Smog anyway, because Smog was able to transition playbooks earlier and call forth the light and magic from Alexander into the world.
I personally was always hoping to at least get a moment where Smog evoked Alexander to cast Holy Judgment, and I'm glad that we got a chance to do that here.
I am considering taking, what's the move from the memory playbook that both y'all have that gives you another form? Ultimate form?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally called Ultimate Form.
Yeah. I have considered taking Ultimate Form and having, like, Hope's version of Alexander from Final Fantasy 13, where he's in a chair on Alexander and like Smog is passed out and we've got this more Alexander body running things in the ultimate form.
Love that. That'd be very interesting.
Speaking of bodies, I am enamored with how Dan decided to make Athenos experience heat death, which is turning into a marble fucking statue.
That was perfect.
Athenos was another difficult one, because Athenos is immortal. He does not age like we would ever think about it. In concept, he should persist as normal. But what I was thinking about is Athenos' existence is very much tied to the people that believe in him. So what if we experienced the rise and fall of civilizations over thousands of years? What the concept of gods becomes after all that time, remembered in antiquity. Dex, what was your reaction to that?
I was really curious as to how you were going to do it because you were trickling them in, how each of us experienced dying. And we started with Pony, we moved forward and forward, we got to Siri, and I was like, how would we do Athenos? We've established that Athenos can die, but on their world, you can come back. So I thought this was a really cool way to show like a permanent death being immortalized in legend and eventually forgotten. If you're not around, you won't be remembered. People don't remember you, then you're just a statue, right? So I just thought it was a really cool way of showing that. I thought it was neat.
It was definitely one of the ones that I wanted to have its effects start to take place way later on. Needed a good bunch of time before it happened.
I also love Tao's aging and the degradation of the phone, things getting more pixelated, and then Zach playing into it and talking about how different things are more low poly or pixelated as we went along.
I am so happy that Zach played into it because they eventually evoked their ultimate form, but even the flames were like 2D
JPEGs.
images that were JPEGs that were like crisscrossed with each other like an old 3D game blasting the wolves out there. I just the imagery for that segment, it just sticks with my brain.
Is Siri's experience of like growth and death was so not what I expected.
I was anticipating a series. That was one of the ones that I definitely thought of before that. Sammie has always harped on the fact that a series like a Greenland shark. So I'm like, what happens to Greenland shark? Parasites take root in their eyes, and they no longer can see past a certain age. Yeah, eventually a series gonna lose her sight.
But her serpentine form, growing so much, I wasn't expecting that. It was so cool.
Deep Sea Gigantus is a baby. She's little right now. But wait until she gets bigger.
She's just a baby right now.
She's little, 10 feet long right now, but you just...
Sammie and I had a conversation about a series aging after the session. I was asking, what would it be like for the most ancient mermaids? Do they basically turn into what we consider to be like sea monsters, krakens, and as they get older, they just grow to such an immense size that they become so much more different from the traditional mermaid shape.
That definitely goes hand in hand with Sammie having a background in World of Darkness stuff too, because that's what the path of those things tend to go is exponentially weirder, exponentially bigger and more powerful.
Oh, I have plans. I have lots of plans.
Sammie was telling me about how the abyss is kind of like eldritch in nature. The deeper you go, the more unknowable it is, that sort of stuff. And that kind of plays into a series relationship to the abyss too. Things are so much weirder the further along you go with a series' whole homeworld.
Speaking of weird, I'm not sure how to interpret what was going on with Geyser. Was this something to do with Jilly at first and then dying off, but still other people holding onto her as a concept? Why was she waxing and waning?
I was thinking about how to age up Geyser. The major feedback that I had gotten from D up to that point was Geyser's strength is still in part affected by Jilly's condition. When Jilly is at her weakest moments, Geyser is stronger, and that has an inverse relationship. As time progressed in the World of Ages, I still want to play off of the fact that as far separated as they are right now, there's still that thread connecting them. So I wanted to ask, okay, what would happen over time? My interpretation of it was Jilly would get stronger because Jilly was already strong enough to, in part, initiate the events that created the Conglom formation of Geyser's homeworld, bringing the imaginary into reality. Jilly would continue to get stronger, which would weaken Geyser tremendously. And we saw that for a few of the rounds. Then over time, Jilly would still be mortal. They would eventually feel the weight of aging on them. And in turn, that would reflect in stronger Geyser, but eventually starting to fade.
Right. I guess I hadn't really pieced it together until we started talking about it, but everyone was on personal timelines and not necessarily aging at the same rate.
I tried to think about how some of the rates were doing, and I kind of tried to have things start about how they would sort of go down, but...
Yeah, there's a reason Pony comes first.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, Pony's a little falabella, where their lifespan compared to all of you is not very long. Characteristics of you all definitely settled about when those effects would start in the span of how far you guys had gone into the celebration. I didn't want to really remove anyone from the play, if that makes sense. I didn't want to age out Pony and just have them sidelined during that. I still wanted them to be able to do as well.
We did hop on that as players, though, and I assumed that you meant for us to do that, and it wasn't just going to be like, well, if you ignore it, she's going to be fine. She would at least be vulnerable being so old.
Yeah, I had not necessarily planned for you guys to do that. I am glad that you did. I set it up so that it was open to your guys' actions. Had you guys not done that, weight of this aging would start to grow quite heavy for Pony in particular because they'd been through it for so long.
I do want to talk a little bit about the fighting because it did last for a couple ticks and some pretty funny stuff happened. I think Athenos made the first big move.
Well, Athenos was pissed. This time I didn't feel so clear. In the first world of Spirit, I was like, we're fighting the Sleep Beast. I'm gonna punch this guy. This is the worst god I've ever met, right? So it was very clear that I was like, I don't like you. I'm gonna punch you. I couldn't figure out Lone until after the whole thing transpired. And it started bubbling over when we finally confronted Lone about when we started interrogating her, and then the others found the disc with all our images on it. Things started coming together. And then we were still working with Lone to start a new age, so Athenos was begrudgingly working with her. But then all these wolves, they kept trying to get in to disrupt the ritual. And Athenos was so mad. He was like, you guys want this new age. What are you doing? Sit down. So he just yelled at some wolves.
I love how the yelling was so powerful that we had Athenos do a convince somebody.
Yes.
In that moment. And the result of that, Athenos' scolding of the wolves is so successful. They just sat down and started wagging their tails.
He's a leader of the wolf pack.
He was the alpha wolf.
I was like, good, sit down.
I don't know if I got to my point before when I was talking about the wolves. What are they? They were Siglia's power that was, in essence, desiring a new age so that they could come back and reunite with Alround, fix things, that sort of stuff. And the sort of remnants of the inhabitants of the world, the single-minded desire to start the next age. When it was actually happening, they had basically gone viral. They saw that the goal of their single-minded desires caused them to want to get to that thing as much as they can. It's for someone who is completely parched and needs water, it's when the spigot first turns on. You just rush over and you want to get that thing. That's why they acted the way that they did.
Hearing how you said what could have happened, now I'm curious to see the world where we ended up fighting Lone. Because you said she was going to betray us initially, and then she had these ideas, and she was uncertain of which path to follow, and ultimately she didn't end up betraying us, but I thought it'd been really interesting to see ultimate transformation, boss music, why is the boss music playing, and then the wolves are on our side.
Yes.
That would have also been wild, but I'm extremely happy with how things went.
I was prepared to basically be ready for you guys to want to do anything. That included the very real possibility of Lone, who absolutely was not wanting the next age to happen when you guys got there, to want to stop you all. I actually never mentioned this, but Lone, when the next age celebration started, they had cast an enchantment on themselves, which would have protected them in a potential skirmish with you all. Lone at that moment was preparing for a potential fight if they were gonna go and interrupt the next age. It was very close.
Well, you can't double back on a series googly eyes looking right at you.
Asiri did have a good deal of impact, I would say, but a lot of the actions of you all working together, and Lone had a moment to, maybe not for everyone exactly one-on-one, but had a pretty close interaction with a lot of the party, almost all of you guys, I think. That definitely made things a lot more complicated for them for what they were initially thinking.
I guess something else I wanted to say about the battle is that I finally realized Smog's kind of a bard now. I can use Final Fantasy Bard Song. Well, he cast first Charm and made the sitting wolves into attacking the enemy wolves. And then there were wolves that were trying to pile on each other to get up into the walls. So cast Toad on them so that the whole towers came tumbling down.
I'm so glad we got to see Toad.
I'm going to play with that more in the future. And I think I'm going to like retcon that instead of being like a different shade of blue, because I think stories and bard song and stuff like that, they have to work on a slightly higher level than elemental stuff. Doesn't necessarily work well in the system of magic I've set up, but maybe he'll go like rainbow when he's doing bard song.
Aww.
Love that.
Pride moment. It's him having an LGBT moment.
Smog at Pride. We do need to talk about the configuration.
There's a whole other can of worms.
Literally, though. So we completed the transfer of the new world. We met with Cyclea, and Cyclea presented us with the world core, which looked very similar to the world core of the World of Spirit, in that it was the swirly butterfly thing. Was there any notable differences between the coloration?
The cores have all appeared the same.
Yeah, we've collected the core of the World of Ages, and as we're intending to head back to Sequence Charter, we got intercepted into the time warp space of nothingness that Smog had initially brought us into way back when we started this. And things go vastly awry from there, i.e. Asiri accidentally pulling everybody into the actual abyss and drowning them. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
The good news is half the party doesn't need to breathe.
Geyser, Tau, and Athenos would have been fine. It's really just Smog and Pony.
But like I said in the game, the actual play, when we were playing, just because I don't need to breathe doesn't mean I don't want to breathe.
You got me there. Listen, the abyss is good. The abyss is home. Asiri was happy for like 10 seconds, and then they were elated for like 20 minutes because their familiar came back, Forsafini, the baby.
Because of Forsafini, I was like, whoa, did Sammie actually choose to take that, like, I don't remember what the name of the playbook is. The one that feels like you have a Digimon or whatever?
Familiar, yeah.
It's like, whoa, did Sammie choose to take that and Dan's setting it up?
No, did not take that.
That'd have been pretty good.
I wasn't expecting that at all, actually. I was completely blindsided until, like, I was like, oh, baby! Yay! Oh, fuck, my friends are dying.
Oh, it's okay. Smog made a big wind spell and everybody breathed again.
Smog made a big wind, more than 11.
Oh my god.
And trapped it in a bubble.
Ew.
Wow, that really broke you.
That was not good enough to warrant.
No.
My apologies. You guys entered at least what is the facsimile of the abyss. As we proceeded through, things got a little fucky and warpy. We saw downtown Final Fantasy Land. We saw clown tents. We saw a Greek temple.
A mishmash of all the worlds that all of us come from. I was not surprised. I had talked with Dan beforehand because this is, spoilers, my last session for now. Since this was my last session with the playgroup for now, I wanted to run it by Dan to see what a good ending for Athenos would be. So I knew that we were going to head into this crossroads going in, but like I didn't have any further details beyond that, really. And my whole goal was to figure out whether or not Athenos was going to stay in this world, or if, once we inevitably got out of this area and back into the Sequence Charter world, if he was going to stay back in Sequence Charter and work in like the library or something, continue accruing knowledge. Because I wanted Athenos to be available to Dan if he needed to use him as an NPC or something. And like, we had a lot of fun playing with him, so the options were open, and we ended up deciding that Athenos would stay behind in this world between worlds with a mix of all of the things that make our characters great. He's going to experiment a little bit more with his godhood, stay with Hercules, and build out this world between worlds so it's like a more hospitable place. So it can actually be like another hub. To do so, he did bring in help from our two previous god friends, Cyclea and the Sleep Beast. So Hopefully the world he generates is not so chaotic and petty, but we'll see what happens, I guess.
Ah, yes, we got to see the light portal for the first time. Summoning through friendship rather than warping science and magic to fit your needs.
Smog's like, I can't imagine what that's like.
Never done it before.
Don't know her.
Couldn't be me.
That was an interesting place to be in, because every time each of us did something, it pulled a new element from our own worlds in Stronger. And so we were like, at the end, just kind of going back and forth between a lot of Smog stuff, a lot of Assyria stuff, and a lot of Athenos' stuff.
Smog had Pony help with making the first portal out, and that's why we ended up in the circus seeing Hercules, because Pony was so focused on this idea of home, because Smog was like, you need to focus on this idea to help power the spell.
I think what I'm most interested in, and what I'm like so sad I don't know what's going to happen, is after you guys say goodbye to Athenos and Hercules, and then you end up back in Sequence Charter, everything's gone dark. I don't know how much time has passed. I don't know, like, going on. People are like, oh, they're back. Like, as if they're either expecting you to have been dead or, like, not able to return. There doesn't seem to be any power. What's happening?
Tara's going to be 90.
No! I cannot imagine for the life of me that much time has passed.
When I was telling Sammie, because Sammie was worried, because she had some plans for Assyria back at Sequence Charter. You guys will be able to speak with everyone that you had spoken with before. Some time has definitely gone by, and that's what you guys are going to figure out. Definitely some things have happened. All of the other portals besides the World of Spirit have been closed down. Yeah, there was a motion trigger for when you guys got out of your World of Ages portal.
The vibe will be Buffy, what happened over the summer, first episode of a season deal.
Oh, no.
Especially with missing someone and some of us coming back different.
God, I can't wait for that conversation.
There is definitely going to be a talk. It's like, okay, one, Athenos is gone. Two, Smog, what happened to you? And also, where's Juice?
Pony also seems to have actually accepted not being a unicorn, wildly.
Entering the configuration and going through the World of Ages, like, you guys have definitely been changed coming out of it.
Shit got real. Also, like, Assyria met with an aspect of the Abyss in the configuration as well, which has a lot of ramifications.
So the configuration, I wanted it to be an idea of a higher dimension, something that spans all of the worlds that you guys are a part of. I want it to feel very abstract and surreal in a way, to see what you guys know exactly from your home worlds getting directly brought into the same space as other things from your guys' home worlds. For example, Alex, as you can imagine, Alexander traveled through this place to get through, like, the world of the lost in order to reach Smog once again. There's must be so much to it.
My idea before had been, like, we might have been traveling through the world of the lost because we're traveling through unreality to get to a reality. My thought now might be, like, the world of the lost is, like, the mirror to this. It is what doesn't exist anywhere anymore, and this is everything that exists.
That's pretty much the right idea. For what I have in mind for these two places is that the world of the lost is in the sort of unconscious space, particularly with ideas that are no longer in the world of the conscious or the sort of reality of things. The configuration is all about what is real, but it's in a higher plane where things intersect. It's not any one of the base places at all, but it's somewhere outside of it.
So what I'm hearing is that the configuration is heaven and the world of the lost is hell.
I mean, have you seen The Master? Of course.
I certainly would say that the world of the lost is not heaven. Because I personally... I don't think anyone would really want to wind up there. No. I think most of all the Master. Of all the people.
We got lots of explaining to do when we get back, Lucy. I don't know.
I hope the party has at least some good dialogue with each other about the worlds that you guys came from, because I hope there's some questions on what the hell was that you guys just saw. maybe we could get some cross experience going for everyone's sort of backstories and home worlds they belonged to.
I think Athenos' real reason for leaving is that he didn't want to have to explain any of the ridiculousness that happened over the last world.
Correct. See you guys in 2 weeks. I just don't want to be there to explain the whole first segment.
None of it.
Athenos in their Athena brain was like, okay, Terra's gonna kick our ass. I'm not gonna be.
Exactly.
Look, if I'm not there, they won't ask me about me passing out. Which I say I totally didn't pass out.
Yes, exactly.
I would like to say that even though I am absolutely decimated that I can't play with Athenos and you anymore, Dex, for the time being, I do love how Athenos went out at their final scene.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. I wouldn't have had it any other way.
And mechanically, it's actually very fun because I do intend to be available for gaming again in the reasonably near future. So mechanically for Interstitial, I burned all of Athenos' links for experience, so I should be able to do what Smog has done in the past and come back as a new class. So that should be fun.
My question for you, Dex, is are you sure you don't want a tooth?
You asked me, don't make me deny you twice.
Siri has a current 0 for 2 run for trying to offer people. No, I think 1 for 3, because I think they were able to do something for the tooth in the bucket. The score is 1 to 3.
To the surprise of no one. No one wants Queen.
I'll find someone.
People have been rather accepting of a Siri, but they do not accept the teeth.
I'm surprised we haven't got like a Pony moment where Pony is like, I know someone who would want those, and like reference the Tooth Fairy or something.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining Swan going like, hey, you want some palm fuzz? You want my palm lint?
You want my sheddings?
Oh, I know
Deal,
someone on
please.
my
God, Smog has a room that's all black. Yeah, that shedding is going to be real bad.
Gross.
He's going to need like a turbo Roomba.
It's all gears now.
It's all gears. Are you going to have to redecorate your room at Secret Store? They use so many resources for your like disco ball.
I think Alexander's probably still fine with any of this stuff. Wants Swag to feel comfortable. I don't think we need to change the room.
I am obsessed. Dan was like, do you want to move? Do you want to give a Siri a room in the tower? And I was like, why? So you can open the door and all the water will come out? No. It's fine.
Kind of packing it in there.
So, what would y'all have done different?
For the countdown in the end of the World of Ages, I think I would have reduced the number of chimes from 12 to something less, like 8 or 6. That would have made it feel a little bit faster, maybe a little bit more hectic. I could have had some events begin a bit sooner, and that might have made things a lot more dynamic. As it stands, I think it went okay.
I think it would have been great if it had gone poorly and we got them out of order. Like you hear 5 chimes and then 7 and then 2 or something like that.
Oh, like if things start messing up, oh, that'd have been pretty cool, actually. Like stuff starts happening backwards.
Hell yeah. So I did have Smog start blasting his way towards Sequence Charter through the configuration. I would have liked to try to do things a little more physically, maybe, like especially with, we saw the Highwind, the base of the Moogle Mafia off in the distance at some point. Like, what if Smog was like, no, I'm going to move towards there and start Reconciliation or something like that, and then would have been somewhere else. I don't know. It might have been interesting instead of to continue blasting. But we still got a good moment out of that, so I'm not too unhappy about it because he stuck a series goop in his pipe and smoked it.
Good.
That's such a bad way of saying that.
Abyss mucus, my favorite.
Ew.
And that's how he opened some dark portals.
It's what the kids are called,
very
the dark
dark.
portal. Horrible, thank you.
thing I would have done differently is accepted a series tooth. I'm kidding. That would never happen.
Got him.
You got to break a young fishling's heart.
But I think what I would have done different maybe is like, it sounds bad, but like antagonize Lone a little bit more.
The NPCs are always available for antagonization.
I liked how it turned out anyway, but I'm just imagining bullying Lone into turning into like this monster.
Yeah, I feel like just no one else was having it, but it was useful to the point until people stopped it, and that's like why people let it get as far as it did. Yeah, maybe if some other people had a little more antagonism towards Lone, we would have seen a bit more of an edge.
I don't want to get like fully back into the discussion, but I do think it's because I think the prime witness of any of like Lone's sus activities was Smog, and Smog had proven himself to be particularly untrustworthy after returning as Alexander. Just like new personality, everyone's unsure whether to trust Smog yet. Asiri in particular was like super betrayed by like Smog asked her to help with magic and then like coming back as a new person. So like it was very hard for Smog to be like, hey, I think like Lone's up to something sus, and everyone was like, okay, Alexander.
That reminds me, we hadn't talked about it, but there was a moment when Force of EFFETE came back and a series slipped up and said Smog instead of Avatar of Alexander.
Yep. You make that girl elated, she'll go back to normal. Unfortunately, that elation was very brief, so it's back to the Avatar of Alexander for you.
Oh, man.
Speaking of this series, what I would have done differently is I wasn't quite sure about how the overall swell of the battle with the wolves would have went. If it didn't end on, what was it, the 11th chime when all the wolves started to dissolve, I was going to pull out a move I haven't used yet, which is True Power is the Light. When you fight against the Dark Force, spend a heart link to make it stumble or fall at an opportune moment, which I was just planning on just being like, everyone stop, you're done. One more second, we're good. Fortunately, it didn't come to that, which is nice. But I was going to be like, all right, everyone's dead now, stop.
I think my plan was to cast pigs so we would have pigs and frogs and wolves.
Oh my goodness.
Original barnyard over here.
You said exactly what I was going to say.
You're like, this world needs more biodiversity. You'll never survive on wolves alone.
Wolves and frogs alone? Oof.
We need more complex vertebrates in this ecosystem. Alright, so let's get into the resolution phase, the segment of the show where we each get to say something about the game with no responses. What is your final say on this session, Dex?
I am going to miss all of you. I didn't think I was going to miss playing a game with a Final Fantasy Moogle, a Deep Sea Mermaid, a pony from Falabala Shrek universe, a Draconid Vocaloid, oh, and a Nightmare Dream Clown. But like, I absolutely will miss all of that. Again, my name is Dex Fan. You can find me at Dex Fan Writes on Twitter. I have recently finished the first draft of my most recent novel, which I intend to try to get published sometime later this year. And something I think you should all check out is the Flesh and Blood TCG, which I've been recently very obsessed with.
What's your final say, Daniel?
I just want to say, Dex, it's been great playing with you. Athenos is a wonderful, wonderful character, and of course, we've ensured that the door's always open. Whenever you would like to come back, we can pick up basically as if no time had gone in the first place. I don't have any social media, so you can see me in the clock tower at the end of time. If you guys were interested in the sort of concepts that we talked about for the World of Ages, I would encourage everyone to watch the video Time Lapse of the Future, A Journey to the End of Time. There's a 4K version of it out. It's by Melody Sheep on YouTube. It's a more scientific version of looking at a fast forward to the end of everything. It's 30 minutes. It's also kind of heart-wrenching at points, but it's very beautiful too. I encourage everyone to check that out.
What about you, Alex?
Dex, I will obviously miss you as well at the table. Excited to see you again in 2 weeks when Athenos, is done avoiding all the Secret Charter stuff. It's a joke. You can find me on Twitter at Shining Crowbat. Gonna throw something evergreen out again. Podcast But Outside is what it says on the tin. You have 2 comedians sit outside, usually in Los Angeles, their home, but anywhere around the world, and interview whoever comes up. A little of a general content warning because it's just random people coming up talking about whatever they want to talk about. But the hosts do try to rein it in and make it digestible, and it's always pretty funny. So definitely recommend checking that out.
And for myself, Dex, I'm going to miss you. You're always a blast to play with. I am eagerly anticipating your triumphant return as new Athenos, but there will be a hole at the table for a little bit, and I'll miss you.
Now I have to wait so long to get updates because I have to be on podcast speed.
Dex, you have access to the files if you just want to listen to them when we put them up.
I have to wait so long because I have to listen at podcast speed. I thought this was a segment where we got to say things without comment.
It's my turn! You're commenting!
Oh, man. Oh, God.
Love you, Dex.
Stellar group of people.
You can find me hanging with the bats in the belfry. This has been Resolve, an afterplay show. You can find us online at most social media sites at ResolveAP.
Except Instagram, which is at ResolveAfterplay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. You can buy the game we're playing, Interstitial Our Hearts Intertwined, from its creator, Riley Hopkins, at linksmithgames.com.
All links will be included in the description of the episode.
Thank you again for listening. We end our turn here, so now it's your turn. Tell us what's happening in your game.